In this video, we're going to show some of the new integration capabilities in LAGAN Enterprise version 9. As I hope you'll see, these are really important and they support multi-channel or digital by default strategies in that, as I've termed it, they support multi-channel integrations or multi-channel end-to-end business processes. A couple of the specific things that we changed or enhanced significantly include our ability now to push events out to other systems. That process, which has been previously called Case Extender and Event Publisher, we've protected the existing version. That's the first thing to say, but we've created a brand new version which uses a thing called Spring Integration, which is much more granular and lets us do some interesting things and address some problems that the customers have expressed in the past. That's the first thing. So we've refreshed Case Extender or Event Publisher. Those are two names it's been previously called. And the second thing we've done is we've introduced this new integration web application framework, which allows us to do some interesting things that includes decision trees or decision rules. For example, being able to automatically change the work queue that a case has been allocated to based on, for example, the priority of that case based on criteria that was collected during the reporting process, like say the depth of a pothole, and also reallocate it based on, for example, the location of a problem. And this would happen automatically server side and therefore be multi-channel. So there's an awful lot in this. It is quite a technical video, but I'm going to start with how it looks to the business and to the user and show you that, and then incrementally we'll drill deeper and deeper. Okay, so the process we're going to look at here is pothole, and we're going to create a pothole request. We're going to see what happens to that pothole request automatically, and this uses this technique I talked about, whereby we can define rules in LAGAN Enterprise version 9 in this new thing called IWA, Integration Web Application, which allows us to define rules using XML, which can be automatically invoked based on certain events. And in this particular example, it's on the case ready event. This is a new event in the integration framework, and those that have done integration before will immediately recognize that I have not said case creation. This is a new event that will only get fired whenever the e-form has been added to the case. And I expect those that have done this before will see the benefit of that immediately. So let's do that. Let's create a case. So we'll log an incoming call. We will go through this and pick the right service request. Okay, I went around the wrong way here. Let me just pick roads and highways, because we've got a few cases set up in this system, and pothole. Now what we want to do is get the individual's details. I'm just going to pick anyone's address or someone's address. Doesn't really matter who it is, or someone's name. Doesn't matter so much who that is. And we'll move on and we'll say they're verified. Now, then we want to look at the location. Now, this is the bit that's important. The location I select here will determine where it goes to. Now, I've got some properties set up in the system already. One of those is flat 38 in St. John Street, so let me just get that selected here. I want there we go. Now what's interesting about this one, you can't see it here, but I could actually turn to current details. And there you go. This is allocated to Ward A. Now we're going to do this process again a couple of times, and you'll see we're going to select a property with Ward A, Ward B, and Ward C, and we're going to see what happens to the work queue. So this is the property we've selected. It's in Ward A. We're going to what you'll see is this will get reallocated to a work queue that's dedicated to handling requests in Ward A. So let's go to the e-form now. So we'll say it's now I've skipped out the GIS process here. Obviously, well, hopefully it's obvious. If you select the GIS and still associate with the property, this would still work. I'm just trying to cut out a lot of the. You'll get to the nub of the requirement here. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So I'm just filling in some options here. Hit submit, and that's done. Now let's just go to the contact history. I want to go to, I'll just say no. Now we'll stop the call. In fact, it has stopped, the call, the script's done that. Let's now go to the history. Okay, so this is the one we just created, and it's already been allocated to Ward A. Now, what I need to show you, and I'll show you in a minute or two, we'll go into the configuration and show you that actually the work queue that case was originally allocated to was not Ward A, or not Public Works Ward A, it was something different. And this has already happened automatically behind the scenes. Let's create some more with different properties first to see how this allocated work queue will change automatically. Again, the point here is the agent doesn't have to worry about this. But more importantly, any device that's looking to report this, say for example through an Open 301 interface, this all happens behind the scenes. That's the important thing, and hence it's multi-channel. Let's do another one. Do the same thing this time. We'll do the pothole, and I'll select the correct one this time. And we will again select a customer. We'll pick the same guy, and we'll click on that. Call verified. Continue. Location of the pothole. This time we're going to pick unit 46 in Billingbrook Road. Now this one is on Ward C. So if I look at current details, sorry, Ward B, beg your pardon, you see it says Ward B. So when I create this, we should expect that to be automatically allocated to Ward B. So let's find out. So I complete the E-form, getting too fast here. I'm just putting in just random data here. Don't go too hung up on that, please. Okay, hit submit, and we'll go okay. And I will now go back to that person. Oh, sorry, I've got to finish the interaction first, beg your pardon. Go back to that person, look at their contact history. We've now got two, let me just do this, refresh. Let me just check this. Yeah, 1018, it's now 1019, so that's the one we just created. And it's already been allocated to Ward B, so this is pretty much instantaneous as well. So again, a different case, let me just go back to the other one, just so you see this. By the way, I picked the interaction. The previous one was this one, which is Ward A, allocated to Ward A. And again, the second one was allocated to Ward B. And again, you didn't see me select any wards or any properties, so locations in the case. That happened automatically. Let's pick one more just to prove for you, to finish that point. This time we'll pick Ward C. So how can I help you? Again, request for service, roads and highways, pothole. Again, we'll pick the same person. This guy's obviously got a thing about potholes. So we've got that, verified the customer, and we'll then pick a property. This time I'm going to pick Christchurch, Arlington Road. In fact, almost too many. There we go. I think that's the one. Let's just check. Ward C, yeah, so it's Ward C. So I'll go find, complete the E-form. Okay, we'll click submit, click OK, and then we'll finish interaction, go back to that person again, look at their contact history. Just going to click the refresh there as well. We picked the last one, which was created at 10:20, it's now 10:21, and it's allocated towards C. So, what you've seen there from a business perspective is how when cases are created, the system, LAGAN Enterprise version 9 now allows you to define rules in XML that allow you, for example, to reallocate the work queue that a case is put into by default, reallocate that to something else based on the location. And that all happened automatically without the business user having, or the end user having to get involved. Let me stress, this is one example of the type of rule that you can put into the system. It's an XML-based configuration. There's a lot of other things you can do, and how it works is we can pick up different events. In this case, in this example, a new case-ready event, which only gets fired whenever the E-form is allocated to the case. This is a major benefit in version 9 as well. So we get the case-ready event, and then we execute a rule that's been defined. I'll show you this in a minute, which then picks up the location from the associated with property, pulls out, in this case, the ward, and defines a rule on that which says if this is in Ward A, put it into this work queue, if it's in Ward B, put it into this work queue, and so on and so forth. That's how it works. Let's now look at the configuration. Okay, so let's look at how this is working step by step. Let's start with the classification itself and the process definition. As I mentioned, when we create the case originally, and for those that know, the case would have been created before the eForm, typically with an agent desktop, it would have been, it was automatically associated to the case routing work queue, as you can see here. This is the configuration of the process we just looked at. But somehow that got changed. So how did it get changed? So for this point, just be aware, it originally goes into case routing. You'll see that work queue name again. Let's now look behind the scenes. Okay, so now things get a bit more technical. If you're not technical and you're watching at this point, well then you shouldn't really be watching this. This is a job of the IT person to define the rules. This is the rules or decision tree piece that we talked about earlier. This allows us to, in this case we're using it to reroute the case based on information that's been collected as part of the case raising process. I have skipped out a step here, and I probably should have done it first, but I'm going to keep going here. What's happened is the case is created, it generated a system, the new system in version 9 generates what's called a case ready event. We've picked up that case ready event already. I'm not showing you this during this session, but I will come back to it and talk about it. That's all happening. We've got some XML in here that actually enriches the message within our framework, and this is really important stuff. I'm not going to drill into it in too much more detail, but I know some that are watching this will understand what that means and see the value of that. So we've already enriched the message, and what we've done specifically in this case is we've taken the event, we've gone back into LAGAN and pulled out more information about the associated object. So by the time we get to this rule, we have everything we need, okay? And of course, the other thing is this can all happen from a design pattern perspective before we pass it on to a back office system for further processing. So let's look at this configuration. Now, I am not an expert in this. I used to be a developer, some of you probably might know. I know enough to explain the gist of this, and that's all I want to do. This is not a training course, but nevertheless to give you a flavor of how this actually works. So what we start with here is, we're creating an array, which basically says, it maps the words that will come from the properties onto work queues. So these are work queues we've already set up in LAGAN Enterprise, and you saw these already. So we have Public Works Ward A and Ward B and Ward C, and effectively the array basically says if it's if the property record has got Ward A, then we want to allocate it to Public Works Ward A. And that's it, nothing terribly difficult about that. Skipping on down here, then what we're doing here is we are pulling out a part of, beg your pardon, what we're doing here is we're saying if the case ready event, if the case that we're now looking at is currently in the case routing work queue, now remember case routing was an actual work queue, so we're ignoring everything else, so therefore other work queues or other cases that we're putting to different work queues will be ignored. This is only going to focus on ones that we're particularly interested in this case, in this scenario, case routing work queue. So we're looking at that. Then we're saying if those cases, in this case of the pothole ones, are allocated to a property record, and D3, for those that have used our web services might already know, that signifies a property record. D1 and D2 represent I think it's streets and intersections perhaps. I always get mixed up on what's what, but D3 represents a property record. So we're basically saying if it's associated with something else, then we're going to have to use a different rule. But in this case we're focusing on property records only, and we're saying pull out the ward name from the record, remember, or from the event. Remember we enriched this, and I talked about how we did this. I didn't show it to you, but I talked about that we've done it by this point, and it is all configurable, I want to stress that. And then we're basically saying, okay, with the ward name that we pulled out from the property record, give me the corresponding work queue from the array that I set up earlier. So this is the array here, queues, which we set up here. And we're basically saying, give me the corresponding queue. Again, if it doesn't match, we have a process for handling that. I'm not going to go into that now. So by the time we get to this point, in the XML, we have selected the equivalent LAGAN Enterprise work queue, and then it remains for us to go back in from this XML here and update the case with the corresponding queue. And that's it. That's how it works. So again, at a very high level, we'll do a bit more drilling down, or talk a bit more about the events shortly. But at a very high level, what you've seen is that we've got this new case-ready event that gets generated whenever we both create a case and whenever the eForm is associated with the case. So that event gets generated. We've then got some other XML that we've configured here to enrich the message. We didn't show that, to add some extra information, in this case the associated with information. And then we've executed this rule, which we've just looked at, which then reallocates any case that is currently in the case routing queue. Again, this is configurable, we can change this, or you can change this, and then went back into LAGAN and updated the case to that queue. And that in itself will fire its own event, and quite possibly pass that on to another back office system for further processing, or indeed a work crew member using Employee Mobile, the new Employee Mobile being 13R1 being released in May. So let's pause, and then we'll now go on to the types of events that are now generated in LAGAN Enterprise version 9. Okay, so we mentioned this new case-ready event. We've actually done an awful lot in terms of the events that we publish. This is the documentation for version 9, which is online. Hopefully you'll see already, or immediately, we've got not just documentation but also XSDs. So this is a new thing as well. So all of our events and information like case objects and so on are now all strongly typed using XSDs. For those that use integration tools, middleware and so on, this is a significant change over version 8. And you can obviously use, well, for those that, this will be obvious to those that use these tools, but you can drop these things in and it makes it easier for you to do the rest of the integration, let's say. So these are all very significant changes from version 8. And hopefully this will be the people that are, the technical people will hopefully see this and it'll be obvious to them. Let's quickly look at the types of events we now have. This is the list here. I don't have the exact number, but I think we had about 12 events, something like that in version 8. Now we've got, well, the list that you see. Again, lots of documentation here. I'm not going to go through all of these. What I want to do is, however, show you a couple. The first one is the case ready event that we've seen now in action. This is a very significant event for us, and I know for customers as well. We did some market or customer testing of this. If we did this, would it make life easier? And the response was a resounding yes, please. So the key thing about this is that if there is no eForms associated with a case, then you get this event directly after a case is created, and in fact directly after the create case event. If there are any eForms pre-configured for a classification or process definition, then this event only fires when all of those eForms have been added. Now, most customers typically have one eForm, not 2 or 3, but we do know some that will have 2 or 3. And you might want, in those situations, customers would typically want the case-ready event to be only fired whenever all the eForms that have been pre-configured against the process definition have in fact been added. So that's what it does, and that's how it works. Now we know this solves an issue with the customers have had, in that prior to this you would have had to have waited for a period of time before you processed a case creation event. Otherwise you were in danger of processing the case before the eForm was added. This addresses that issue, and it's quite a benefit. I'm sure you'll agree. So that's case ready. I also want to show you briefly, before I go on to that, I want to show you some of the change stuff. This is new as well. Let me pick, there's the change case event. Let me pick a different one. Sorry, I want that one actually. So we have change events now as well. Again, customers asked for this. There are different change events. Here's one for title. So basically, depending on what you change in a case, so let's say for example, an agent creates a case, it gets sent to the back office, and then the customer rings back in again and changes something about the case. It could be the information that we collected in the e-form, it could be the title of the case, it could be the description of the case, something like that. We now have events that will be fired in each of those circumstances. And the really cool thing about it is it doesn't just tell you that something changed, it tells you what has changed. Now we'll look at this later in this video as well. Before I leave the documentation, I want to just show you briefly the actual XSDs themselves, just to give you a flavour of how this works. So if we go back up to documentation, and there we go, go to XSDs. Oh, by the way, sorry, you'll see here as well, there's case management events, there's interaction events, and there's e-form events. So, for example, if you change the data that was collected, just mentioned this a minute ago, the change events for that will be under e-form. In fact, let's just click on that now. So there you go, update e-form data event. We will show, or that will enumerate all the information that's been changed in that e-form, and then allow you to you don't have to guess what's changed, it tells you. And again, we'll look at some examples of change events shortly. Let's go into just the XSDs briefly. So the XSDs have different levels. You've got the XSD for the actual event itself, which is what you're seeing here. This is for the create case event. Let's look at the case ready event. In fact, let me just search for that. Oh, there it is there, just in front of me. So there's a case ready event XSD there. Now this also makes reference to other objects or elements in XSD terms, cases and event triggers, and they're also defined as XSDs elsewhere. I won't show you that now. But hopefully that gives you a very strong idea of, in terms of documentation in XSDs, how that will help you in integrations moving forwards in a very significant way actually. Right, let's now look at some of the events themselves as they have been generated in the system. Okay, so we've looked at the types of events we generate. Now let's look at some of the actual events that were generated. These are, at the minute we've set up this particular LAGAN Enterprise version 9 system to publish events to a file system. Now, this is just so we can look at them, and you know, in testing you might want to do this. It's quite an easy way to get at the messages, have a look at them, inspect them and so on. But, and let me be clear, we can also configure this to publish it to a JMS queue, a secure JMS queue, HTTP, and many other transport layers, which is probably what customers will want. But nevertheless, this is useful to show us what's been generated so far by this system. This particular event we've highlighted here, I've brought up on the screen. This is one of the 3 events, the case ready events that were generated for the cases we created. A couple of things to point out here. We've got correlation ID at the top. This allows us to group events together that need to be processed in a particular order. For example, if you update a case, and let's say we change the e-form data, we change the title, we can group those together so that they're processed together as one atomic unit by a back office system, for example. Again, customers have asked for that, and we've listened and put that in. Then we go through here, and this is the raw event that was generated by the system. So we've got, I think from memory, we've got more information here than we had in the previous version 8, so that we can kind of reduce the situations where you might need to enrich the message. But nevertheless, there's always a balance here from putting too much information in to putting in too little. So we don't have everything in, and in this case we don't. We're missing the award name, for example, so we've got to go and get that. But let's look at what's in here again. So the creation date, the QID. The QID isn't the one you've seen on the screen, which was I forgot the name of it now. It was a generic name for a queue. This is the internal QID. We didn't show this when we were creating it, but that's the same. That's the internal view or name for that queue. And we go on down here. Again, this is all about the case. We also link to the property record, the associated with record, which in this case, this is the ID here. We got some more information about that, which is, again, this one. We've got the textual address as well, but it doesn't have the ward ID, award name. So again, but that gives us enough that then allows us to enrich the message, enrich the message downstream, which again is what we did behind the scenes. I didn't show this to you, but we've got this IWA thing that I talked about earlier. The integration web application allows us to enrich messages prior to passing them on for further processing, or including applying our own rules and or passing them on to other back office systems. So again, that hopefully gives you a flavour of the types of new events and also what they look like in the system. Again, we can't hope to cover everything, and do not hopefully be disappointed by me not covering certain aspects of this. This is to give you enough interest to see that integration has significantly changed in version 9. Transformationally, I believe, actually. We still maintain our support for all the existing integration mechanisms we support in version 8. That's fundamental. But we encourage our customers, existing customers, as they do new integrations, to adopt the new framework because it will allow you to develop stuff in a more multi-channel way. Okay, so we've come to the end of this very much a sneak peek into LAGAN Enterprise version 9 integration, the integration capabilities. It started off high level business with a very simple business process, but one that our customers need. And it got very quickly into very deep technical information. So that's the nature of integration, but hopefully if you're a technical person, you can see the significant value that we now offer in version 9 over and above version 8. You'll also probably realize that all of these things are doable today. But the important thing is it's about making it easier to do. So for example, the ability to reallocate a case based on its location is something customers do today with our system. But that logic, I can think of a number of customers, they've put that logic into the submit of an e-form. And because it was convenient for them to do so. We're trying to make it convenient for all of our customers to put that logic in the best possible place, which is server side, so that all clients, all consumers of that service, not just the contact center, but also the web, also Open 301 endpoints, all of those things benefit from the same logic. Otherwise, you've got different processes being invoked depending on what channel, which is not where we want to be. So, if you want to ask me what's I was to say what's the most significant thing about version 9, I'd probably say there's two things. One of those things is the ability to now do multi-channel integrations or end-to-end processes that include integrations in an efficient way. So in the final summary, that's probably my first summary. The second summary is just simply what you saw was what's in version 9 is two things. One is, from a technical perspective, one is a brand new event publisher. Yes, we protect the old one, the existing one in version 8 and version 7, but we've got a brand new one, which is built on Spring integration. It's got a lot more events and they're more granular. And secondly, we have this new thing called integration web application, which includes a bunch of stuff which I haven't even talked about, but the most significant thing for this video is the ability to apply rules to things like cases and interaction events and e-form events once they're posted, to do some interesting stuff like change the work queue that a case has been allocated to, and like change the case based on a priority, for example, the depth of a pothole. These are all things we can do. Hopefully that gives you some ideas of what's possible, and I look forward to sharing more with you about what's possible in LAGAN version 9. Thank you.